Sorry if this is the wrong place to post. I've never put something this personal into the world before, but I need to get it out of me. This is long, and it's messy, and it will probably make me sound like a fool. I don't care. It's the only honest thing I can do right now. We met when we were very young. I was 20. She was 19. We moved fast because everything about her felt inevitable. She was loud and bright and smelled like new books and coffee. I was quieter, the kind of person who plans for the future while everyone else is laughing in the moment. We balanced each other for a long time. We built a life that felt like proof that two people could make the ordinary beautiful. A small house, a steady job, 3 kids who filled every corner of our days. For years, I thought the hard work meant safety. I took odd shifts, overtime, second jobs when money got tight. She handled the everyday things, school runs, birthday cakes, the endless pile of laundry. It never occurred to me that what I was building could be exchanged for something as fleeting as a thrill. I kept telling myself that love is a slow thing, not a spark. I told myself presence and provision were the same as passion. The night it happened, my wife went to the shower and left her phone on the nightstand. It's an image I can still see. Steam fogging the bathroom mirror, the phone glowing gently on the wood, the ordinary domestic quiet that felt like a lie the moment the screen lit up that a text preview flashed, still smiling about last night. The sender's name was a number I didn't recognize. For a second, I told myself to walk away. Respect privacy. Don't be the man who rifled through her life. But the pull was stronger. I picked it up. I read. What was on that screen didn't fit into the neat life we'd made. It was a map of another life she had been making with someone else. Messages that started as casual flirtation grew into something intimate. Details about meetings in hotel bars, plans late after work, jokes that became promises. She told him she felt alive in ways she hadn't in years. She told him things she never said to me. And somewhere in those lines, she described me, too. Dependable, comfortable, safe, as if I were a good investment, but no longer the person who made her heart race. That I sat there as the house slept and read message after message. There were dates that matched family events. One message, time-stamped the night of our son's school play, said they met for a quick drink. I remember the rustle of program pages and my son taking a bow on stage. At the time, I thought she was backstage helping with costumes. I had no idea she was lying on purpose. When she came out of the shower, hair wrapped, towel in hand, I asked simply, "Who is he?" She went white. She stumbled through denials, then cracking, then confession. She said it started with texts, slipped into meetings, and then into a few brief affairs. She said she felt seen by him in a way I hadn't acknowledged. She said it made her remember who she used to be. Her words were both confession and explanation, but they were not forgiveness. She wept and said she didn't want to lose us. She promised it was over. She said she had been stupid and selfish. I wanted to believe it because the alternative, a family broken to pieces, felt unbearable. But believing it and trusting it are not the same thing. The days after the discovery felt surreal. We moved through routines with a stereoscopic split. On the surface, meals, homework, soccer practices. Beneath, a quiet storm of suspicion and rage. I watched her like a man reading someone else's script. Every call she took, every message she checked, set my nerves on edge. My sleep turned to short, sharpened fragments. When our daughter asked if we were okay, I lied for a moment, then could not keep it. I decided to tell her the truth myself. Not for catharsis, but because secrets spread like weeds if you let them. I sat with her on the edge of her bed and said, in words that felt heavy and ridiculous to my mouth, that her mother had been with another man. She asked if we were leaving. I told her I didn't know. I promised it wasn't her fault. Friends and family didn't know. She posted vague captions about self-reflection and finding the truth online. People sent hearts and platitudes. I watched comments pile up praising her bravery. Those reactions cut too. Being alone in the knowledge that your life has been lied to while strangers rally around a version of your partner that omits everything you know that we tried counseling. We went together twice. The therapist asked questions that opened doors I wasn't ready to walk through. She talked about loneliness, about missing passion. I talked about betrayal and broken promises. We practiced listening. She cried and asked for a chance. He asked me if I could ever rebuild trust. I did not know how to answer. Tea night. Memories became saboteurs. I kept returning to the firsts. Our first tiny apartment with its drafty windows, the car we scraped together to buy, the night our first child came screaming into the world. I replayed the sound of her voice when she called to say she was pregnant. How do those images reconcile with a woman who could look me in the eye and make plans with someone else? How does a life of shared burdens become the setting for a secret romance? Anger came in waves. So did shame. I felt foolish for missing signs that, in hindsight, were there. The new perfume she wore sometimes. The late text she always silenced quickly. The small, unexplained receipts in a jacket pocket. But shame is selfish here. The fault sits with the person who chose to betray, not the one who trusted that we set rules. Boundaries intended as a scaffold for a tiny, shaky trust. She left her phone on the kitchen table each night. She agreed to share passwords. She moved sleep closer to the couch. She told him she was done. He replied with a short acknowledgement, and, for a while, the text stopped. That is progress of a kind, but it is not healing. Rebuilding is not a sequence of rules. It is a slow, reluctant relearning of how to inhabit a life together. One night, months after the first discovery, I found myself staring at a photograph of us in a frame on the mantel. It was from 10 years earlier, grime on our hands after home renovation, paint under our nails, laughing between drywall sheets. I remembered how close we'd been in that moment, the conspiratorial joy of two people trying to make something theirs. I felt grief like a tide. Grief for the version of us that existed freely and in full trust. Grief for a man who now measures everything by proof. I have had to explain to myself who I am outside of the marriage. For so long, my identity was braided into our life together. Provider, father, the person who fixed the leak or shuffled carpools. Now I'm learning to be a man who holds complexity, hurt, and care at once. I find odd moments of clarity. A neighbor asked me last week how I was doing, and I told a sliver of the truth. That things were hard, that I was staying because the kids needed stability, but also because I didn't yet know how to leave without causing damage. Money, routines, and legal questions hover like unpaid bills. We whisper about lawyers as if saying the word aloud might make it real. For now, we keep it practical. Who will take the kids to school if one of us must travel, how to manage birthdays, whether grandparents should be told. Each small decision is a test of whether we can cooperate without the illusion of safety that once covered everything. Sometimes I imagine a future where we get here and have honest dinners about everything, where she says the things she hid and I stop cataloging evidence in my head. Maybe that is possible. Maybe we will rebuild something different and steadier. Or maybe, in time, I will take my children and build a quiet new life where betrayal is a memory that no longer commands my mornings. I don't have an answer, and maybe the absence of a tidy ending is the most honest part of this whole story. Right now, I keep showing up. For the kids. For the small rituals that kept us whole. I cook. I drive. I sit through the awkward silence and try to be the parent who remembers that childhood deserves more than two people's failings. I do not know what the end will look like. I only know the present, this uneasy, ragged middle, and that I am learning, minute by minute, what it means to survive a life that cracked and keep choosing to care anyway.
Let me tell you another story. I never imagined I would find myself here, sitting alone in the quiet of our home, the children asleep upstairs, feeling as though everything I believed about my life has been a carefully constructed illusion. We've been married for nearly 9 years, and during that time I have always thought we had built something stable, predictable, a life defined by routines, shared responsibilities, and mutual care. Our home has always been modest but warm, filled with the noise of our 2 children, the comfort of small daily rituals, and the sense of security that comes with planning and preparation. I have always considered myself responsible, practical, someone who thinks ahead. I manage the finances, pay the bills on time, balance our accounts, plan for emergencies, and take care of countless details that keep our household running. I believed that careful planning and consistency would protect us, that my attention to detail would ensure our life together remained secure. I was wrong. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly at first. Small discrepancies appeared in our shared accounts, charges I did not recognize. A boutique I had never heard of, a weekend getaway I had not been told about. At first, I asked casually, letting her answer as though it were no big deal. She smiled and explained them away as small treats for herself, little indulgences that made her happy. I accepted the explanation, convinced that trusting her was the right thing to do. I told myself that everyone deserves a small bit of freedom, a small private joy, and I wanted to give that to her. For a while, I told myself it was harmless. But as months passed, these small anomalies became larger, more frequent, impossible to ignore. Packages started arriving at the house, delivered without mention, often for no clear reason. Jewelry, electronics, clothing. I asked her, expecting plausible explanations, and she always had one. Gifts for friends, work-related purchases, items for the children, things related to hobbies. Each answer was calm, believable, and yet, beneath the surface, unease began to grow. Something inside me whispered that this was not just harmless indulgence, that a pattern was forming, that the life I knew was only part of the story. One night, I stayed home after work, determined to review our finances thoroughly. I went through bank statements, credit card bills, receipts, and transfers, scrutinizing everything. That's when I saw it. A large sum transferred to a bank I did not recognize, an account I had never known existed. No invoices, no receipts, no explanation. My chest tightened. I traced the transactions one after another, uncovering more hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands of dollars moved over months and years. It was not impulsive or careless spending. It was deliberate, systematic, and hidden. She had been constructing a private financial life in parallel to ours, a world I was never meant to see. I spent days absorbing the scale of what I had discovered. Tens of thousands of dollars spent in secret. Luxuries, trips, electronics, clothes, purchases I had never imagined, planned around, or approved. I tried to rationalize, to find a reason that could soften the blow. Perhaps she needed independence, some control over a part of her life, a space that was hers alone. I understood the need for autonomy intellectually, but emotionally, it was devastating. Every financial decision I had made, every saving plan, every careful budget now seemed undermined. It wasn't just the money. It was the secrecy, the deception, the deliberate construction of a hidden world inside the home I thought was shared. I began replaying our life together, searching for signs I had missed. Our wedding, simple but heartfelt. The early years in our first apartment, learning how to live together, navigating the chaos of young adulthood. The births of our children, the sleepless nights, the messy early mornings, the laughter and frustration of everyday family life. Ordinary moments, grocery shopping, doing laundry, weekend park visits, school projects, quiet dinners, were now reframed. I looked for hints, missed cues, anything that might have revealed her hidden activities. I questioned my judgment, wondering whether my structured, meticulous nature, my focus on planning and responsibility, had inadvertently driven her to seek control and secrecy. The children, thankfully, remained unaware. I tried to maintain normalcy for their sake, but the tension inevitably leaked into our lives. I caught myself snapping more easily, reacting with subtle irritations, my attention divided between routine parenting and an unrelenting internal calculus of betrayal. Every ordinary task, preparing meals, driving to school, helping with homework, was accompanied by a quiet awareness that the life I had trusted was only partially real. I hated that my inner turmoil could, even subtly, touch the lives of our children. I feared the invisible consequences of the emotional strain my presence now carried. I traced the transactions meticulously, mapping them against our family milestones. Birthdays, anniversaries, school expenses, vacations. It became clear that the deception was not accidental. This was a carefully maintained pattern, sustained over years, concealed through layers of plausible explanations. Each discovery brought a mix of anger, disbelief, and exhaustion. I could not sleep, replaying every transaction, every package, every hidden detail over and over. The realization that the woman I had trusted completely had been living a parallel life in the same house left me both numb and furious. Despite this, life continued externally. I maintained my role as husband and father. I cooked, cleaned, drove, helped with homework, and tucked the children in each night. But internally, everything had changed. I scrutinized her every action, monitored financial statements constantly, and evaluated every behavior through the lens of suspicion. Ordinary routines became tense exercises in vigilance. Trust, once implicit and effortless, now required effort, attention, and constant awareness that I tried to process her motivations. She claimed it was not about malicious intent, that she had sought autonomy, control, and a sense of freedom. She felt restricted, confined by the structure we had built, the financial decisions I managed, and the shared routines of family life. I could understand the need for personal space and independence, but understanding did little to soothe the pain of betrayal. Her deliberate actions had consequences, tangible and emotional. Our savings, our carefully planned future, the sense of security we had cultivated, all compromised at I end the quiet hours. I reflected on our life repeatedly. Shared milestones, celebrations, vacations, everyday routines, all now tinged with the knowledge of hidden deception. The ordinary joys of our marriage were reframed as moments lived alongside secrecy. I questioned how much of our life was truly shared, how much had been a facade maintained to conceal a hidden reality. Every memory became layered, bittersweet, mingling love, regret, and disbelief. We continue forward, cautiously. She closed the accounts, pledged transparency, and promised to rebuild trust. I navigate this altered reality with constant awareness, balancing love and commitment with vigilance. Each financial decision, each household routine, each interaction is now measured and scrutinized. The marriage has shifted into a careful negotiation, a daily exercise in managing trust, expectations, and emotional safety. Yet, I remain present. I continue to care, to participate, to support the children, and to manage routines with diligence. I strive to separate betrayal from the love I still feel, to maintain stability and preserve what remains of our shared life. Every quiet moment, morning coffee, folding laundry, school runs, dinners, is now shadowed by the knowledge of what has been hidden, but life moves forward nonetheless. The past cannot be undone, and trust, once fractured, cannot fully return to its original shape. But the present demands navigation, effort, and presence. I continue to show up, balancing love, caution, and responsibility, finding a way to live alongside her, protect our children, and reconcile with a marriage that will never be the same. Even as the shadow of secrecy lingers, I persist. I continue, step by step, maintaining the life we share, carrying the knowledge of betrayal as a quiet undercurrent beneath the ordinary rhythms of family life.
You think that was bad? Wait until you hear this. Dad started getting sick about 5 years ago. At first, it was small things. He would forget where he put his keys or what day it was. My brothers and sisters shrugged it off, said it was normal aging. I didn't know what to think at first either. I just helped him with little things when I could, running errands or fixing stuff around the house. But it kept getting worse. One winter morning, he fell and broke his hip. That was the moment everything changed. After the surgery, he came home from the hospital, and it was clear he couldn't do much for himself. He couldn't walk without help. He couldn't cook or clean. He struggled to even get out of bed without someone guiding him. I knew right away that someone had to step up. My brothers and sister didn't. They had excuses. Work, travel, families of their own. None of them could make the time. It didn't surprise me, not really, but it hurt. So I did it. I became the one who took care of him, and that meant my life had to change. The first few weeks were rough. I had to learn fast. How to lift him safely, how to help him use the bathroom, how to get him dressed. Things that never seemed difficult before were now challenges every day. I had to do laundry, cook meals that he could actually eat, make sure he took his medications. I spent hours on the phone with doctors, scheduling appointments, arranging transportation. The physical work was tiring, but the emotional part was worse. Seeing the man who had always been so strong now completely dependent on me was heavy. The apartment itself felt different after that. Quiet in a new way. No more Dad moving around on his own, no more sounds of his work in the garage or him making breakfast in the morning. Every little sound mattered. If he coughed, I had to check if he was okay. If he groaned in bed, I had to figure out if he needed to move or if he was in pain. I became hyper-aware of everything in the apartment, the heater humming, the creak of the floorboards, the way the light fell in the living room at different times of day. It all became part of the routine of keeping him safe and comfortable. At first, I tried to get my siblings involved. I asked if they could take a few days, help with appointments, or just spend some time with Dad. They always had reasons not to. One said work was too busy. Another said travel was planned. My sister said she had too much going on with her kids. I stopped asking after a while. It was easier to just do it myself. It was exhausting, but at least it got done. Days blended together. Wake him up, help him get dressed, feed him, clean up, take him to therapy, make meals, do laundry, handle appointments. Every day was a cycle, and it never really stopped. Sometimes I wondered how people do it for years. I had no idea how tiring it could be to be responsible for someone's life every single day. There were nights when I stayed up late just listening, making sure he was comfortable, or catching up on planning for the next day. Sleep was often broken. Some nights I didn't sleep at all because he was restless, or in pain, or confused. Despite all that, there were small moments that made it worth it. A smile when he managed to stand with my help. A thank you when I cooked something he liked. A laugh at a joke he remembered from years ago. Those little things reminded me why I kept going. It was hard work, and it never ended, but it mattered. He mattered. I noticed things about my own life changing. I had less free time, less time for work, less time for friends. Everything I did was centered around Dad. Even grocery shopping, which used to be quick, became a careful exercise. I had to think about what he could eat, what he could manage, how to keep the apartment safe. Every small decision was influenced by his needs. There were times when I felt alone. My siblings didn't visit much, and when they did, it was brief and uncomfortable. They didn't understand the work it took to care for someone fully dependent. They didn't understand the emotional weight of seeing a parent lose their independence. I learned that caring for someone is not just physical, it's constant attention, emotional energy, patience, and planning. Every day requires mental focus. Every action has consequences. You can't just walk away. Over time, I got better at it. I learned how to lift him without hurting myself. I learned how to cook meals he could eat. I learned the best times for therapy and how to encourage him without frustrating him. I developed routines that made life smoother. Even small things, like arranging furniture so he could move safely, became important. Every detail mattered. Holidays were hard. Birthdays, Father's Day, Christmas, they were different now. I had to manage everything. Decorations, meals, gifts. My siblings contributed little beyond cards or quick visits. I learned to adjust my expectations. The holidays weren't about them. They were about Dad, and making sure he felt included and comfortable. There were moments when he recognized something from his past, an old photo, a song, a smell, and his eyes would light up. Those were the moments that carried me through the exhaustion. Even when my body ached and my mind felt fried, seeing him happy, seeing him recognize a memory, made all the work worth it. I also had time to think about family. About why my siblings didn't step up. About how life sometimes makes people choose convenience over responsibility. It hurt, yes, but it also reminded me who I am, what I value, and what I'm willing to do for the people I love. Caring for Dad wasn't just duty. It became part of my identity. Part of the story of who I am. There were days that felt endless. Waking up, helping him, doing chores, appointments, therapy, meals, cleaning. Nights that were too quiet except for the sound of him shifting in bed or sighing. Weeks that blurred together, punctuated by small victories. But slowly, routines became manageable. I found rhythm in repetition. I found pride in competence. I found strength in perseverance. Even after years, it never got easier. But it became familiar. The weight of responsibility, the fatigue, the quiet moments of connection, they became my normal. I learned that love isn't always loud or dramatic. Sometimes, love is doing the same small thing over and over. Sometimes, love is being present when others won't. There were small joys too. Sometimes we would sit together in the sun by the window. I would read aloud from the newspaper or tell him about my day. He couldn't do much physically, but he could listen, smile, nod. Those little moments reminded me that he was still here, that he still had presence, even if his body no longer obeyed him. And when he laughed quietly at some small memory from decades ago, I felt it in my chest. It was the kind of sound that makes all the exhaustion fade for a moment. I also started noticing patterns in his health. Some mornings were better than others. Some nights he would sleep more soundly. I learned to anticipate his mood changes, what would frustrate him, and what could comfort him. Small adjustments made a difference, moving the chair slightly closer, making a favorite breakfast, or playing music he liked. Every little bit mattered. Even with all this, the absence of my siblings was constant. I realized that responsibility isn't evenly shared in families. Some people step up, some step back. I had to accept it, even if it was bitter. And yet, I also realized that this was a privilege in a way, the chance to be present, to witness, to care for someone I love in a way no one else would. Every morning I wake up, check on him, make sure he's comfortable, make sure he's fed and safe. Every night I make sure he's settled, lying safely in bed, breathing evenly, comfortable. Every day is a cycle, and it's a cycle I have accepted. My siblings never did. And that's fine. I know what it means to care. I know what it means to be present. And in the end, that is all that matters.
Now, listen to this one. My brother has always been a good guy at heart, or at least he was. When we were kids, we shared a room, played basketball in the yard, and got into trouble together. Those memories feel distant now, almost like they belong to someone else. Over the past few years, he started gambling. At first, it was small, harmless-looking bets on sports games or the occasional weekend trip to the casino. I thought it was just him blowing off steam. But it didn't stay small. It grew fast, consuming everything in its path, and before I knew it, his life was spiraling out of control. He began hiding money, lying about where it was going, inventing stories about bills or emergencies. Every time I asked, he reassured me it was nothing. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to think it was just a temporary lapse, a phase he'd grow out of. But the evidence piled up quickly. Within months, his life began to unravel. He lost jobs because he would skip shifts to gamble, or show up late, distracted, exhausted from nights spent at the tables. Friends stopped lending him money, stopped inviting him out, stopped answering calls. His reputation began to crumble, and yet he couldn't stop. He didn't seem to want to. Every time I thought maybe he'd reach the bottom, he went deeper. I watched helplessly as he pawned items, drained accounts, and borrowed money from people he barely knew. The lies became daily, the deception constant. I didn't know what to do at first. My parents tried to stay out of it, saying he was an adult, he had to learn consequences, but I couldn't. I saw the destruction firsthand. I watched him make choices that could ruin his life completely. It became clear that someone had to step up, and that someone was me. I took responsibility, slowly at first, then fully. I covered bills he couldn't pay, bought groceries he should have been able to afford, ensured rent was handled so he wouldn't end up on the streets. Every day was a battle, a constant cycle of damage control. The work was exhausting. I had to keep track of multiple accounts, reconcile what was missing, prevent creditors from contacting him, cover emergencies that arose when he disappeared for hours or days. I learned the exact patterns of his gambling, the times when he would be most vulnerable to temptation, and the subtle signs of stress or panic that preceded another reckless decision. Every detail mattered. Every mistake could spiral into disaster. Emotionally, it was draining. Every new discovery of secret debts or loans triggered a wave of anger and frustration. I'd feel a mix of disbelief, worry, and guilt. Why was I the one holding everything together while he refused help? Sometimes I thought about walking away, letting him face the consequences fully, hoping he'd hit rock bottom and finally change. But I couldn't. I couldn't imagine him alone, struggling, destroyed by something he couldn't control. I became more than a brother, I became his lifeline. I organized his finances, tracked debts, set reminders for payments, intercepted calls from creditors, and carefully shielded him from the consequences he refused to face. I became a constant presence, intervening when necessary, covering up mistakes, preventing small disasters from turning catastrophic. It was relentless. Every morning started with checking accounts, reviewing payments, making sure bills were handled, groceries stocked, and emergencies planned for. Every night ended with ensuring he had food, money for essentials, and a safe place to sleep. The physical toll was immense. I spent hours running errands, often carrying heavy bags of groceries or dealing with his late-night emergencies. I rearranged furniture to prevent accidents, managed repairs, and navigated logistical problems that seemed endless. Some nights I barely slept, listening for signs of trouble, worrying about what he had done while I slept, wondering if he would come back from the casino with another financial disaster. Socially, my life shrank. Friends didn't understand why I was constantly preoccupied, why I declined invitations, why I seemed exhausted all the time. Siblings offered minimal support, claiming it wasn't their problem. Holidays were the worst. Birthdays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, they were tinged with anxiety. I had to manage his presence, ensure he didn't spend recklessly, and try to maintain a sense of normalcy for everyone else. Every festive occasion became another test of endurance. Despite all this, there were moments of fragile hope. Some weeks, he managed to avoid gambling for a day or two. Sometimes he repaid small amounts. Occasionally, he laughed at a memory, reminisced about childhood adventures, or simply sat with me without any lies, debt, or chaos weighing on him. Those moments reminded me why I stayed. Those glimpses of the brother I knew before addiction took hold were enough to keep me going. I also learned patience I never imagined I could have. I learned to separate the person I loved from the destructive choices he made. I learned endurance I didn't know I possessed. And I learned the devastating loneliness of responsibility, how isolating it can be to be the only one standing between someone you love and total ruin. Even with all precautions, the setbacks never stopped. Creditors still called. Friends still confronted me with unpaid loans. He still disappeared for hours, gambling beyond his means. But I stayed. I couldn't let him fall completely. I picked up the pieces, covered the bills, fed him, guided him, protected him. I carried the weight of his addiction like a heavy, constant shadow. It's exhausting. Some days, I can barely move, mentally and physically. But then he smiles at a memory, thanks me quietly for something small, or simply exists in a moment of peace. Those instances are fleeting, but they are everything. They remind me that despite everything, love persists. Responsibility persists. Family persists. And even when it seems impossible, someone has to stay. I've spent years in this role now, and it hasn't gotten easier. But I've become stronger, more aware, more disciplined. I know the depth of human fragility, the weight of unspoken burdens, and the limits of patience. I've learned how to navigate life with someone whose self-destruction is relentless and constant. And even though he may never change, I stay. I stay because he's my brother, and family isn't about quitting when it's hard. Every morning I wake up, check accounts, ensure bills are covered, make sure he has food, and prepare for the day ahead. Every night, I confirm he's settled, has money for essentials, and isn't in immediate danger. Every small victory, every day he doesn't gamble beyond his means, every time he survives another week, reminds me that persistence matters. Even when nothing seems to improve, even when friends and family have given up, I stay. Because someone has to. I've learned that love and responsibility are messy, exhausting, and thankless. I've learned that being the only one who cares sometimes means sacrificing your own peace, your own life balance, and your own mental health. But it also means making sure the person you love survives, even when they refuse to save themselves. Even now, years into this struggle, I'm still here. I'm still managing crises, covering bills, watching over him, living with the anxiety, and enduring the exhaustion. And I will continue to stay, because he is my brother, and that is what family means.